Dr. Lynn Newman's crew was attacked by German fighters. And it turned out that the tail gunners' position, the guns, were malfunctioning. And they were, at this point, all alone. And so the pilot felt that the only way that they could survive would be to put the plane into a deep dive to some cloud cover down below. He either didn't communicate this or there was something wrong with the communication system, but in the nose section of the bomber, where the bombardier and the navigator and the nose gunner were housed, they didn't get the message. So when the plane went into this deep dive, the navigator and the bombardier felt for sure that the plane was going down. So they bailed out. They were captured by the Germans. Dr. Lynn Newman, who was in the nose, it took a little time for him to get out of the turret. And I think when he did get out, either he couldn't find his parachute or it wouldn't fit, I'm not sure which, but by that time the plane had leveled off and they proceeded to fly into Turkey, where they were, Turkey was a neutral country, and they were then on a circuitous route shipped back to the United States with the provision that they could not return to combat. Is that not right, Doctor? Don, why don't you stand up? Dr. Lynn Newman, who evaded bailing out, right here in the front table. Also, with respect to evading capture, most of the people in the 15th Air Force were incorrectly advised that the communists, we call them something else at that time, but nevertheless, they were communists, that they were the friends of the Allies, and that the part of the villagers who lived kind of in the mountainous areas under Mihailovich, that they were our enemies. In fact, we were forewarned that if they captured us, probably dire things would happen to us. Now, it turned out that the communists, even way back in the war, when they were our allies, were already plotting to the overthrow of a lot of Europe, including Yugoslavia. And they had infiltrated high levels of the British government, and also in Barry, the headquarters sort of the 15th Air Force, to the point where we believed that they were our friends and that the Mihailovich villagers were our enemies. Well, Churchill and Roosevelt subscribed to that. So basically, they refused to give any aid to Mihailovich and his people, and all kinds of help to the communists, who incidentally were no doubt paid handsomely for every survivor that bailed out and they returned to Italy. Now, a book has been written about how this was totally false, and the name of the book is The Forgotten 500. And the reason for the Forgotten 500 is the villagers under Mihailovich had given refuge to 500 of our airmen. And they not only gave them refuge, they helped them build an airstrip. And after a fashion, these 500 people were basically rescued by DC-3s, I would call them, that were sent in and landed on this side of a mountain where the villagers were situated. After the war, the State Department for many, many years refused to acknowledge the grave mistake that had been made. And I think the Mihailovich was awarded some type of a major award, which the State Department put in a desk drawer and didn't transmit to him for years and years and years. So if you've never read the book, The Forgotten 500, you will be very, very pleased that you had the opportunity and to get finally an understanding of what really happened over in Yugoslavia. They were in fact having a civil war in Yugoslavia at the time the Germans were supposedly in control. So now to get to my subject, the Markersdorf Airdrome mission resulted in the 3rd Presidential Unit Citation for the 451st Bomb Group. And incidentally, this isn't a bragging sense, but in a sense of what happened to us, I believe the 451st might well have been the only bomb group that was awarded 3 Presidential Unit Citations. And I say happened to us because it seems like that dire things happened to us when we were awarded a Presidential Unit Citation. But to get back to how I got involved, at the age of 17, in the little community in northern Indiana where I live, almost all of the boys volunteered for some branch of the service. And when we became 18, we were immediately called. And I had volunteered, as many did, to go into the Army Air Corps. Most of us thought we would be pilots. The fact is, they needed gunners a lot more than they needed pilots. The training period was very brief, and so most of us ended up going through gunnery school. And when I graduated from gunnery school, I went to crew training at Charleston, South Carolina, and that's where the first big plus factor happened to me. I was assigned to a crew where the pilot was 35 years of age, had been training other pilots, and he was like a dad. When you're 18 and 35 is an old age for a pilot, and he was a great pilot. And when he lined up the gunners in our crew, there were 2 of us by the name of Jones. He quickly pointed to me and said, "You're Big Jones and he's Little Jones." And that's the way we were known all through the war in Europe. While we were at Charleston, 3 B-24s with their crews went on a training flight over the Atlantic Ocean. They were never heard from. To this day, to my knowledge, no one knows what happened to them. Did they collide? Did the navigator foul up and they just ran out of gas? Or were they victims of the Bermuda Triangle? No one knows. But that was just the type of thing that happened all the time in training for these novice people that were thrown together to form the bomb groups. When we were flying overseas, up in Newfoundland, I think it was, a B-17 exploded on the runway. I don't know, what caused it to explode, but it was a tragedy. And but we did get ourselves to Italy without great mishap. And so our first mission was August the 23rd of '44, but on August the 22nd, our bomb group had lost 9 of 27 bombers to German fighters. And someone decided, high up, that it would be a good idea if we retaliated. So the very next day, they loaded up our bombers with what is called fragmentation bombs. It's like a large picket fence rolled together, small bombs within. And when you have that type of formation, you have to fly a little looser formation, because when these bombs come out, they fly in every which direction. They cover a lot of territory when they hit the ground. So we were in loose formation. We were the lead bomb group, if I remember correctly. And our plane, first mission, we were not at the back of the formation, because we had a captain who was our pilot. And we had a guy from wing flying with us to observe our pilot. He incidentally was shortly after transferred up to wing. But so we were in the number 2 position in the lead squadron of the formation, which turned out to be our very, very favorite safety factor. Basically, when we approached the target, 60 German fighters showed up out of the clouds. And I want to talk a little bit about cones of fire. The German fighter pilots knew more about the B-24 gunnery abilities than we did. For example, my gun as top turret could not fire below the level of the turret, nor could I shoot the tails off of the B-24. It had cutouts for it to prevent that. And obviously the nose turret gunner could only swing so far to each side. If you were a waist gunner, you could only fire from that side of the plane, and really the belly gunner could not fire at anything very high, and the tail gunner could only fire at things from the rear. So essentially, the German fighters attacked from clouds below the plane. And the first thing that happened, and from the top turret I could kind of see everything going on, the first thing that happened is a B-24 appeared off our right wing, kind of out of firing distance, and we didn't know what to make of it. No one had told us that the Germans had captured B-24s that they sometimes use for this. Basically, it was a command ship in the sky, and it directed the fighter planes to attack in kind of a scientific way, and as quick as you can almost think. I don't think the process lasted more than 10 minutes. They shot down 9 of our B-24s. There were planes exploding, planes of fire, people bailing out. It was something to behold. And now we shot down some of their fighters, but I would say that after the war, the German higher-ups in the Air Force compared notes with our own Air Force, and they found that we were claiming to have destroyed 6 times as many fighters as we actually did. Now that's understandable, because when a fighter comes in, you have many gunners firing, and like our belly gunner thought that he shot down a plane, the German plane, that shot down the only plane that we lost out of our squadron. Now, whether he did or not is hard to say, because he wasn't given credit for it, because others had claimed the same plane. But anyway, in 2 days then, 2 consecutive days, the 451st Bomb Group lost 1/3 of their planes each day. And that put us in kind of a short crew situation. Sometimes, as you have heard from Tom Boyd, sometimes a pilot can put a plane in a glide position, get out of the formation, and everyone can bail out in kind of an organized way. And other times it's a matter of seconds as to whether you get out or not. And in the case of the plane that we lost in our own squadron, about half of them got out and half didn't. And essentially, and surprisingly, I guess to us, the bomb formation went on and bombed the target, despite the fact that we had lost so many of our planes. And I guess the way that they, the reason probably that they attacked our bomb group, we were the lead bomb group. I think they felt that if they could disorient our thrust, that probably that would do something to take care of the rest of the formation. But anyway, an interesting thing about this, remember 60 planes attacked us, and we lost 9 bombers, and our nose gunner did not see a German plane. Our nose gunner did not see a German plane. Almost unbelievable, isn't it? But that only illustrates the cones of fire. The Germans were so skilled at how they went about their attack, and with that B-17 out to guide them on what was happening and so forth, So the B-17 incidentally, finally, we fired at it and it peeled off. I don't think we shot it down because it was more or less out of the line of fire, but it did leave, and as did the fighters. Now you might say, well, where were your escorts? Well, we did have escorts that day, but we didn't have them in the numbers that the Germans threw at our bomb group. And the Germans also had a way of exposing a few fighters of their own out to the side of the plane, and sometimes our own escort would leave the bomb formation. And one of the things that the Tuskegee pilots claim is that they never left the bomb formations. Well, I think they were advised strongly not to do that. And but even so, if they're overwhelmed, why things are going to happen. And so we got a third presidential citation incident. The other two, one was for a Palestine raid where we also had heavy losses, and another one to Regensburg where we had heavy losses. So that's about, I guess the thing I should mention is how fortunate, how very fortunate the people in our crew was that we were placed out of harm to a degree, that we weren't on the tail end of the formation, because the first squadrons lost half of their planes that day. And I would mention one other aspect of that. Because of the heavy loss of crews, we flew about every mission. So somewhere about the 10th of October, someone decided to send our crew to the Isle of Capri for R&R, it was called, just a few days. But while we were away, our bomb group on the 13th of October, 1944, flew a mission, and our squadron lost 5 of 7 planes. We surely would have been on the mission had we not been on the Isle of Capri. So it took a lot of luck, not skill so much, but a lot of luck to survive and to fly the 35 missions needed to qualify for getting back to the States. So you might have some questions, any aspect of it.
I just want to make a comment that on the mission to Markersdorf on the 23rd of August, the 49th Wing was to act as a diversion force for the rest of the 15th Air Force.
Okay.
And it worked very nicely because the 49th Wing, the groups that flew on the mission to Markersdorf to bomb the German fighters went after the 49th Wing, and the rest of the 15th Air Force never saw a fighter plane.
That's excellent, Mike. Mike is, of course, the author of several books about the 15th Air Force and certainly the 45th Bomb Group, and probably knows more about what happened at different phases of the air war in Europe than anyone that I know. And so thank you for that.
But the diversion worked.
It didn't help the 451st, but nevertheless we did serve a purpose. So anyone else have?
The 484th got 2 presidential unit citations.
Right.
One of them was August the 22nd. Those 2 are posted, write-ups on those are posted on the 484th Wall of Honor.
Well, apparently
the
on
low
August
ball
22nd,
mission at the end.
you ran into the same dire problems that we did.
It was not an easy mission.
Yeah. Okay. Were you on that mission?
Yeah.
Okay.
If anybody's interested, though, I mean, it really gives good detail about what it takes to get a presidential unit citation.
Sir, I don't know, but I never heard what losses, if any, that the other bomb groups, maybe in our wing, might have suffered. I assume that maybe the other 2 bomb groups might have followed suit in our diversion, but maybe not.
Do you know when they went from 50 missions to 35 and did away with the double credit?
That's a good question. First of all, it wasn't a change. Basically, we had a program of awarding 2 sorties, so to speak, for one mission. It was called a double mission. And in total, it had to add up to 50. So many of our people today, if you ask them how many missions they flew, they will incorrectly say 50. But in fact, most all of them flew 35. And it's just a question of how you identify a mission. I've never felt comfortable saying that I flew 50 missions because I know I didn't. I only had 35 takeoffs and landings. But that's something, you know. And in, of course, the 8th Air Force, they had other standards. Sometimes it was 25 missions. That I don't know how the powers that be evolved the equation as to how many missions you need to fly. But I would say this, and you can appreciate this, if you were just a new arrival and you know that in 2 successive days the bomb group lost a third of their planes, the idea of flying 35 is quite remote. And it took a lot of luck for you to fly 35. We only had, well, I should tell a little bit about our crew, I guess, out of a minute. After flying, I think it was 6 or 7 missions, we had, you're briefed on where you're going. And usually, at the briefing, they would tell you how many flak guns the enemy had. And sometimes it was as many as 200 or 300. And when you would approach a target and you would look ahead, it was almost like a wall of exploding flak shells. And you had to fly through it. So anyway, our tail gunner, who no doubt had been fully involved in the mission of the Airdrome, he went out to the plane, but he couldn't get on it. He absolutely couldn't get on the plane. And so we didn't want him on the plane. If he, you know, we didn't feel mad or bad or anything. Each person has a certain level of, you might say, fear they can withstand. And in his case, he just couldn't get on that plane. So we got another tail gunner, and he was injured by flak and sent home. And finally, we got a third tail gunner who was sent all the way from the 8th Air Force down to Italy. A most remarkable thing. We didn't understand much about it, but later we learned that he had not gone on a mission in which his crew had gone down and were lost. And as far as I know, he performed pretty good, but that is some of the things that happens in you know, in the process of your missions. Any other questions?
I have a question about your gunnery school. When you arrived there, is it true that to train you to fire on moving targets, they got you involved in skeet shooting?
You know, my hearing is kind of poor, but I just can't catch.
I was under the impression that when you went to gunnery school to get you used to firing at moving targets, they started you out with skeet shooting.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I have to tell a little bit about gunnery school. I don't know whether they felt sorry for me, age-wise, because I was just barely 18, or whether I was actually doing quite well in gunnery school. But anyway, they offered me a job of being an instructor. And I didn't know what I was in for, but I nevertheless said no. I wanted to get overseas and get involved with the operations. And but in gunnery school, we had 2 or 3 interesting things. I'll just mention a couple. One was a plane would tow a target, and we would shoot at the you know, we were in flight, and we would shoot. Another one is they had a large oval track, and we would stand up in the back of an open truck, and the skeet would come at us from every direction, and we would fire to get accustomed to fast-moving targets and adjusting and so forth. So Okay, well, we have finished on time, and now tomorrow morning at 10, we have 3 speakers on other interesting subjects, and then in the afternoon at 2, 3 additional speakers. And so quite a few of our people from the, particularly from the 451st, have not checked in. We hope that, I guess some indicated that there was cloud formations earlier in the day here that precluded them landing at the airport. So they might have been delayed.